For more than half a century, Alfred Hitchcock stood at the center of Hollywood. From the silent era of the 1920s to the late 1970s, the master of suspense directed more than 50 films and worked with many of the biggest stars in the industry. Actors rotated constantly through his productions. Studios trusted him with enormous budgets. Audiences trusted him to deliver unforgettable stories. But Hitchcock saw something that the public rarely did. He watched Hollywood from the inside. He observed the carefully polished image the industry presented to the world and the darker reality that existed behind it. When the cameras stopped rolling and the publicity photographers left the set, Hitchcock witnessed the truth about many of the stars America adored. Unlike many of his colleagues, Hitchcock arrived in Hollywood as an outsider. Born and raised in Britain, he entered the American film industry in 1939 with a different perspective. He admired the talent in Hollywood, but he also recognized the hypocrisy built into the studio system. At a time when black actors were usually forced into degrading stereotypes, Hitchcock quietly pushed back. In his 1944 film Lifeboat, he cast Canada Lee in a serious dramatic role. Lee was not forced to perform in the exaggerated dialect that studios often demanded from black performers. Hitchcock even allowed him input into his own dialogue. It was a small decision, but in the Hollywood of the 1940s it was radical. Hitchcock believed the greatest horror was not what appeared on the surface. The real darkness was what remained hidden underneath. And after decades in Hollywood, he knew exactly how much ugliness the studio system had buried. These are 9 famous stars whose racism old Hollywood quietly covered up. Number 9. Shirley Temple. When Hitchcock arrived in Hollywood in 1939, the biggest star in America was not Clark Gable or Cary Grant. It was a 10-year-old girl. Shirley Temple had been the #1 box office draw for 4 consecutive years. During the Great Depression, audiences adored her cheerful singing, dancing, and dimples. She represented innocence and hope to millions of struggling Americans. But many of her films presented a deeply romanticized version of the American South. Movies like The Little Colonel and The Littlest Rebel portrayed plantation life as warm and cheerful. Enslaved characters were depicted as happy servants whose entire existence revolved around helping their white families. Temple famously danced with the legendary tap dancer Bill Robinson. The scene became iconic, but Robinson, one of the greatest dancers in history, was credited far below lesser-known white actors and faced segregation off-camera. Hollywood sold the image of racial harmony on screen while enforcing racial inequality behind it. Number 8. Bing Crosby. During the 1940s, Bing Crosby was the biggest entertainer in the world. He dominated radio, film, and music simultaneously. His relaxed personality made him seem harmless and charming. But Crosby repeatedly performed in blackface during his career. His 1942 film Holiday Inn included a musical number celebrating Abraham Lincoln's birthday, performed entirely in blackface. The irony was staggering, yet almost nobody in Hollywood objected. The film became a massive success and introduced the song White Christmas, which went on to become one of the best-selling recordings in history. For decades afterward, television broadcasts simply edited the offensive sequence out. No explanation was given. The scene was quietly erased. Number 7. Mickey Rooney. Few actors worked harder in Hollywood than Mickey Rooney. By the late 1930s, he had become the #1 box office star in America thanks to the hugely popular Andy Hardy film series. But in 1961, Rooney delivered one of the most controversial performances in film history. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, he played the Japanese neighbor Mr. Yunioshi using buck-toothed prosthetics, taped eyelids, and a cartoonish accent. The role was widely criticized as offensive and humiliating to Asian audiences. Yet for decades, the film was celebrated as a glamorous Hollywood classic. The uncomfortable truth about Rooney's performance was largely ignored. Number 6. Cecil B. DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille was one of the most powerful filmmakers in Hollywood history. Epic productions like The Ten Commandments made him a legend. His name appeared above the title of his films, a privilege few directors ever received. But DeMille also helped shape the political environment of Hollywood. In the 1940s, he co-founded the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. The group opposed civil rights activism and supported rigid conservative policies within the film industry. Through organizations like this, DeMille helped enforce the cultural status quo in Hollywood and silence those who challenged it. Number 5. Hedda Hopper. Hedda Hopper possessed one of the most powerful voices in Hollywood. Her gossip column reached more than 35 million readers every day. A single paragraph could launch a career, or destroy it. Hopper often defended racist portrayals of black characters in film. When civil rights groups criticized Hollywood stereotypes, she attacked those organizations publicly in her column. She also supported the film Song of the South and celebrated James Baskett for portraying Uncle Remus, a character critics argued romanticized plantation life. Hopper did not simply report Hollywood gossip. She helped shape the narrative that justified the industry's racial attitudes. Number 4. D. W. Griffith. Every filmmaker who followed Griffith owed him a technical debt. He pioneered cinematic storytelling techniques, close-ups, cross-cutting, and large-scale narrative structure that became the language of film itself. But his 1915 epic The Birth of a Nation also became one of the most infamous films in American history. The movie portrayed the Ku Klux Klan as heroic defenders of the South and depicted black Americans as dangerous villains. Historians have documented that the film helped inspire the revival of the Ku Klux Klan in the early 20th century. Despite the controversy, Griffith remained celebrated in film history for decades. Number 3. Walter Brennan. Walter Brennan holds a unique record in Hollywood history. He won 3 Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, more than any other performer in that category. On screen, he often played gentle, friendly older men. Audiences loved his grandfatherly personality. But off-screen, Brennan expressed extreme political views. He publicly supported segregationist politicians and spoke harshly against the civil rights movement. Reports from colleagues claimed he reacted with disturbing enthusiasm when news arrived of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Despite these views, Brennan's public image as a lovable Hollywood figure remained largely untouched. Number 2. John Wayne. For decades, John Wayne represented the image of rugged American masculinity. His Western films turned him into a national icon. But in a 1971 interview with Playboy magazine, Wayne made a statement that shocked critics years later. He openly declared that he believed in white supremacy until black Americans were educated to a point of responsibility. The comment caused little backlash at the time. Wayne's career continued uninterrupted, and his films remained enormously popular. Only decades later did the quote resurface and spark renewed controversy. Number 1. Walt Disney. Few figures shaped American culture more than Walt Disney. Through films, cartoons, and theme parks, Disney helped define childhood for generations. But some of his productions contained racial stereotypes that critics have debated for decades. Films like Song of the South portrayed a romanticized vision of plantation life, while animated characters such as those in Dumbo and The Jungle Book included imagery many later viewers considered racially insensitive. In later years, the Disney Company quietly distanced itself from several of these portrayals. Some films were removed from distribution or accompanied by disclaimers explaining their historical context. For Alfred Hitchcock, the lesson was clear. Hollywood was brilliant at creating illusions. It could transform actors into heroes, erase uncomfortable truths, and rewrite history when necessary. But as Hitchcock understood better than anyone, the truth has a way of resurfacing. The real horror is never what appears on screen. It is what has been hidden behind it all along. If you love the scandals, rivalries, and secrets behind Hollywood's biggest legends, subscribe to Hollywood Feuds.